Yo, welcome back to Davin Biology. Yes, I know it's been a while since my last video because a bit busy recently. And today's topic, as you can see already, Form 5 Chapter 2.4 Photosynthesis. So this topic, a lot of students actually will say, wow, teacher, very hard, there's a lot of things to memorize, can give up or not. Now let me just tell you, this is actually photosynthesis, right? Is one of the plant's part that requires the least memorizing, because photosynthesis is actually what we call as a biochemical process, which means it's a chemical process that occurs in living things. So therefore, there's a lot of chemical reaction, and we actually can use chemical equations to remember the photosynthesis process. So first, what is photosynthesis? So photo actually means light, whereby plants use light to produce their so-called food. So it's what synthesis means, I produce something. So the definition is basically whereby light energy is captured by chlorophyll and used to convert water and carbon dioxide into glucose and oxygen. So as you can see, right, the definition of photosynthesis is actually a chemical reaction, a chemical process. We actually can use an equation to remember the definition as well. So by the end of this video, basically, we are going to learn these three things. Number one, the structure of a chloroplast, because photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast. So we need to know what is the structure of a chloroplast, which process occurs in which part of a chloroplast. Now, if by now you don't know how to differentiate chloroplast and chlorophyll, chlorophyll is a substance inside the chloroplast of a leaf. And the second one is the most important of basically the two main processes of photosynthesis: light-dependent reaction and light-independent reaction. So light-dependent means the reaction that requires sunlight. Light-independent reaction does not require sunlight. And once you know these two processes, you also must know the differences between these two, the differences between the light-dependent reaction and the light-independent reaction. So these notes, by the way, you can download for free. I put the link at the description below, so all of you can actually get it. So structure of the chloroplast. So as you can see, I already highlighted the two main parts of the chloroplast is, as you can see, the stroma and the granum. So granum, as you can see over here, is actually made up of a stack of pancakes. And each of these pancakes are called thylakoids. So a lot of thylakoids stacked will form a granum. So granum is whereby you have the chlorophyll, and this is where the light-dependent reaction occurs, because chlorophyll is the one that absorbs sunlight, and the process that requires sunlight is light-dependent reaction. And stroma is basically the liquid part of the chloroplast. This is where the light-independent reaction will take place. So you only need to know these two structures actually inside the chloroplast. Now, so let's straight away go into the next one, the light-dependent reaction and the light-independent reaction. Now, from now on, I will call the light-dependent reaction LDR and the light-independent LIR. So easier for me to say lah, because the process is very long. And if you look over here, right, LDR, by the way, they also call it the light reaction, and LIR, we call it also the dark reaction. Now, these two terms, you actually cannot write it in your answer, but for questions, they might still use these two terms, because this is actually the old syllabus term. So you need to take note a bit lah. You cannot write it, but you need to know what it is at least. So both of these reactions have their own process called photolysis of water and reduction of carbon dioxide, which I will explain to you later. Now, so as you can see below here is actually the explanation, the full explanation of LDR and LIR, which they can ask for essay. So they might ask you to explain the processes that takes place or explain the reaction that takes place in photosynthesis. So this is a 10-mark essay. So like I said, you don't have to memorize word for word for photosynthesis. So if you look at the colored sentence, like the red one, the green one, and the blue one, for example, all these are actually chemical reactions, whereby later I will use chemical equation to teach you all. So before we get into the chemical processes, now look at here. This is how we can start the essay. So you can say the light-dependent reaction occurs in the granum of the chloroplast, whereby inside it, the chlorophyll absorbs light energy, which excites the molecule of chlorophyll until it releases an electron and ATP. So now what does this whole sentence mean? Now, when the chlorophyll absorbs light energy, it will excite the chlorophyll. Excite means it will sort of stimulate the chlorophyll, because sunlight has a lot of energy. So this energy will excite, obviously will stimulate the chlorophyll, and this will cause it to release two things: an electron, which is later used to produce something called nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate NADP+, which I will explain what does it do later, and also produce ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, which is energy. Alright, so now let's start with the first chemical process. So photolysis of water. Photo means sunlight, lysis means I break down water. So I'm using sunlight to break down water. So basically the equation very simple. Water over here and sunlight is used to break down this water. Now what does sunlight break down water into? They basically break it down into their ions. If you're familiar with your chemistry, the ions that form water are hydrogen H+ ions and hydroxide OH- ions. So that is photolysis of water, and this is what this red color sentence is all about. Photolysis of water occurs where light energy is used to split water molecule into the hydrogen ions and the hydroxide ions OH- and H+. Now next, this H+ and OH, something is going to happen to these two. So the first one, H+, the thing that we mentioned just now, NADP+. Now what is this thing? It's actually a coenzyme that functions as a hydrogen carrier. Means this thing is going to combine with a hydrogen ion, which comes from the photolysis of water just now, and form something called NADPH. Hydrogen carrier means it will combine with the hydrogen so that it can carry this hydrogen to the stroma for LIR later, because LIR is going to use the hydrogen, and NADPH helps to carry the hydrogen to the stroma for the LIR later. And that's what happened to the hydrogen. Now, the OH. What happens to the OH? Much more simpler. OH-. So this is an anion, as you learn in chemistry, a negative ion. So what happens to this OH- is going to become an atom. So just like you learn in chemistry, how does an anion, a negative ion, becomes an atom? It needs to release electron. So from OH-, it's going to become OH and an electron behind here. Okay, so if you look at the explanation here, so the green one I forgot to tell you just now, NADP+, you just have to say, yeah, you can just write NADP+, don't have to write the long name, combines with hydrogen ions to form NADPH, which is a reducing agent. So we'll get to that later. Then the hydroxide ion releases electrons to the chlorophyll to form hydroxide groups. So this OH here is called the hydroxide group. See the OH, the hydroxide ions release electrons to form hydroxide groups. Now, why do we say hydroxide groups? Because eventually, quite a number of them, which is to be exact, 24 of them, will combine to produce water and oxygen. So these two are actually the products of LDR. This is what is being produced at the end of LDR. So the oxygen over here is basically the oxygen that we always say plants produce oxygen for humans, for animals to breathe. So this is where the oxygen actually comes from the LDR. So if you want to balance up this equation, which you don't have to because this is bio, not chemistry, there's actually 12 water over here and 6 oxygen to be exact. So this is what's being produced at the end of LDR. And what do I use for LDR is basically water. So you can see this comes from water. All of this actually comes from the initial water. So we are done with the LDR. Now moving on to the LIR, the light independent reaction. So the process that takes place here is called reduction of carbon dioxide, whereby this carbon dioxide is going to react with something called a 5, okay, let me just write this one here first, 5-carbon organic compound. So when carbon reacts with this thing, it will produce something called a 6-carbon organic compound. Alright, what is this? Okay, this 5-carbon organic compound, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbons. So the shape is like a pentagon shape like that. So this thing is actually being produced by plants using proteins. In order to form glucose, which is the end product of the whole photosynthesis process, it needs to combine with carbon dioxide. So basically the carbon dioxide will give it one more C to become 6 carbon organic compound. Okay, so plants can't produce this on their own. They need the carbon dioxide from the surrounding to actually form it. Now, once I form this 6 carbon organic compound, so what is this thing actually? So this thing is actually used to form the glucose later, because glucose, if you remember the chemical formula of glucose, is C2.4. So glucose needs to have 6 carbon, and this is what is using to form the glucose later on. But these 6 carbon organic compound only have carbon and oxygen only, don't have the H yet. So that's why this 6 carbon organic compound combines with the NADPH, whereby the NADPH will supply it the hydrogen to form C6H12O6, which is your glucose. And that is what being produced at the end of your photosynthesis, or at the end of the LIR process. So once the glucose is being produced, that's the end of the whole photosynthesis process. Okay, so let's look at the explanation over here. Carbon dioxide will react with 5 carbon organic compound to form a 6 carbon organic compound. So you just have to mention that exactly from the equation, that ATP and NADPH from a light-dependent reaction will reduce the organic compound into glucose. So I actually left out one thing here just now. There's supposed to be one energy over here, the ATP that we mentioned just now. Over here, the energy. So this ATP, which is energy, is used to combine the 6 carbon organic compound and the hydrogen from the NADPH to form glucose. Okay, and you actually can add one more point over here. You can say this process is known as reduction of carbon dioxide. That will actually give you 1 extra mark. And right after that, most of you should know this also, glucose will then be converted into starch to store in the chloroplast. So as you know, a lot of glucose combined form a starch, monoform polysaccharide. And that's it lor. Once you finish that, that's the whole reaction. So basically for LIR, the raw material is carbon dioxide. You need carbon dioxide in order for this process to occur, because no carbon dioxide means you don't have 6 carbon. No 6 carbon, even though with the NADPH just now, you can't form the glucose. So if you combine, right, all the materials that I just draw in boxes together, you actually will get the equation that we mentioned earlier before. So the red color boxes are basically the materials used. So water and carbon dioxide. Arrow. I'll take this here. This is what I produce in the LDR, right? So I have water and oxygen, and of course, at the very end, glucose. So which is the same equation we get just now, just that actually water, the behind one, we actually, to be honest, to be exact, we cancelled it off, is because we used 24 water initially. By the end, we actually only produce 12, but to be exact, actually we produce 18. Okay, I'm not going to go into details how we get 18 because we don't learn that, but just to let you know, we actually get 18. So if you cancel it off, we actually only use 6 in the beginning, so there's no water behind. But that's not important. Okay, so that's how we got the equation just now in front law. Alright, so done. That's it for LDR and LIR. Now, once we get that done, we know that already. And finally, we actually can compare these two reactions, which is very simple because you actually can use the name to help you compare. So light dependent means what? Light dependent means I need. Light independent means I don't need. So with these two, you actually can answer the first two differences already. Whereby, of course, LDR requires light, LIR does not. And since LDR requires light, it occurs during the day. And since LIR does not need sunlight, it can occur both during the day and night. Yes, day and night also can, because I don't need sunlight doesn't mean when got sunlight, I cannot occur. Site of reaction, cranium stroma, easy. Type of reaction also you can compare. One is photolysis of water, one is reduction of carbon dioxide. And these two basically comes from an equation, the substance required and the products being produced. So the substance required is water and carbon dioxide. Similar, if I combine these two, you can see I also get the equation. The products, if I combine, I also will get the equation that we mentioned just now. But of course, the real equation don't have water behind. Photolysis of water, one occur, one does not. And finally, ATP and hydrogen, of course, light-dependent reaction produces it. LIR uses it. And those are the difference between LDR and the LIR. Once we get that done, that will be it for photosynthesis, and that's it for this video. So if you still have any questions regarding photosynthesis, you can comment down below and ask me, or even DM me at my Instagram. Remember, this is Davin Biology, and I'll see you guys real soon. Bye bye.